Welcome to Hello Kind Soul Podcast, where we raise the vibration of kindness on a global scale. I'm Dr. Ebony Green, your host, and I'm super excited to be with you today. If you want to follow us on all major platforms, look us up at Hello Kind Soul Podcast. And if you want to follow me, look me up at eGreen Equity. I hope you enjoy the episode. Have a great day. Welcome to Hello Kind Soul Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ebony Green. I am so grateful to be in community with you. This week, we're going to chat about how do we let go of control, right? And when I was thinking about what this episode really we could go through and think about, it was really centered around in order for us to help things grow to the place we want them to grow, whether it's people, whether it's businesses, all the things. There has to be a place and a space that you're willing to relinquish control. And so for the purpose of an example, recently I've had some really cool opportunities for my business to grow. And in order to do so, I have to let go of control of some aspects of it. And I'm laughing as I'm saying it to you because I can remember my responses as I was thinking about what systems that I had in place that I had to give to other people to work on, operate, navigate all the things. And I wondered why I was so worried about it, right? Because I didn't feel good. And I realized it's because I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of these things on my own, right? And on one hand, you totally need the help. And so you get to this place where you have the opportunity to hire people, bring people on, hire contractors, all the things. And on the other hand, that requires you to let go of all of the systems and structures that you built, because when there's anything in your life that you love deeply, right, you hold very tight to it, right, to keep it secure, to keep it making sure it's good. The truth of the matter, which I didn't really realize, is that the very thing I want to do, I can't do unless I let go of the control, right? And it made me think about well, what does control make you feel in a way that you won't let go of it? And the control is knowing what will happen next, right? So I'm not a person that does well with a lot of surprises, and I don't do well with them just from my life experience, right? And so oftentimes when we are in spaces of leadership, right, whether we're parents in a household, whether we're leaders in an organization, whether you're the CEO of a business, no matter what you're doing, you understand that all of the responsibility, good and bad, of everything that happens lies on your shoulders. And so I learned that probably first and foremost as a principal in a school. Even as an assistant principal, it's not the same level of weight. I think sometimes people think it's the same level of weight. It's not, because as a principal of a school, no matter what, the buck stops with you. If something happens, whether you did it or not, you have to answer for it, correct it, deal with it, address it, all the things. And so this idea that in order for me to scale to a place to really make sure that we're doing more good in the world, changing more lives, impacting people on a global scale, it requires other people to come in and support you. The other thing that I had to think about was this notion of control is not even real in the way that I saw it, right? Because I'm saying to myself, well, I don't want to let this go and give these pieces away so that other people can take part in whatever role they need to. Here's the thing. If you have systems and structures built in your business, if you have systems and structures built in your home, if you have systems and structures built in your relationship, and when I say systems and structures, folks, I don't mean like hard and fast and rigid. In the interpersonal pieces, I mean systems and structures in a business. Ultimately, the best businesses function whether the CEO is in that office today or not. And the reason they can function and do all the things they're supposed to do is because they have the systems and structures and the infrastructure that everyone kind of knows what it is they need to do to lead towards the bottom line. And for me, the notion of control was not even real, because in order for me to even get this part, I had a ton of team members, a ton of collaborators who worked on every single aspect of everything you see. When you Google hellokindsoul.com, let me be very clear. Everything about it has been a collaborative approach with multiple stakeholders. And so in my mind, the question that was asked was I need, access to your calendar or whatever to be able to add stuff to it. And I was like, access to my calendar. Why do you need that, right? And so it seems like a really small thing, but in that moment, I do a lot. I say a lot about us being able to sit in our body to figure out what we need and what that should look like, feel like, and sound like. And so the one thing I'm really, really good at in this season of my life is when something happens and it doesn't feel comfortable in my body, it triggers a response for me to say, think about this more deeply later. Why does that feel that way? Why do you feel a sense of discomfort or uncomfortability? Like, what's happening, right? And so it almost happens with automaticity in my mind every day, all day. And so when I sat and really thought about it, it was like, oh, because now someone else has the access to your calendar and can add all these things to it. And so I've always had, people, different type of assistants who've supported me in different projects. But the idea that there are multiple people now inputting information into your calendar so that everybody has a full rounded view of like all the things that are happening and what needs to happen when, to me, signaled a loss of control. And then in the same moment as I was processing that, I started to chuckle, like the very thing you hope to accomplish is happening. Like I prayed for this moment. I prayed to get here, to be able to work in a company where I respect the folks I work with. They respect me. We all work hard together to achieve the outcome of changing the world, raising the vibration of kindness on a global scale. And that is no small feat. I promise you. It's no small feat. But it made me start to think about how many other business owners out there, how many other parents out there, y'all. I'm going to talk to the parents for a minute. Like I raise children, and one of the things I've said multiple times and facetiously, but being really honest, it is the hardest job anyone will have in the history of the world. And you don't understand how hard it is until you become one. And then you realize, there's no book to really give me the information I need. But even in that regard, how many of us continually try to make sure our kids have everything, all the things? They don't have a sense of stress or worry or anything. And I'm not saying or suggesting we should provide them with a sense of worry or stress. What I am saying is that every single being on this planet will have moments of discontent, will have moments of challenge and struggle. And it's up to us sometimes to step back and allow them to engage in a problem-solving process that will bring them out the other side. And when we don't do that, we deprive them of their learning. And we almost create, in some regards, situations where now you have young people believing they're not competent. And that's dangerous, right? Because those young people then become adults. And so someone very dear to me shared a title of a book called The Anxious Generation. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't read it. I kind of thumbed through it, but I have not read it. But part of her conversation is about how our young people are living in a very different world now, right? And so part of it is like we overparent. The second piece is social media and its impact on like almost like a dissonance from the reality that we're actually living in, right? The perception of what's real and what's not, all these things, and how it impacts people. But it made me also think about like when we're unwilling to relinquish control, whether it's with, when our children get to an age where they're ready to be more independent, when we're unwilling to relinquish control in a company that's supposed to scale, that's at the end of the one season where you're the only one feeding in, and now there's 5 or 6 people feeding in. If your goal is to get where you want to go, you have to relinquish control. When you're now in a company with 5 or 6 people and you need to hire 5 or 6 more, there's all of these are opportunities for us to let go of holding on to something. And we all know if you have something and you don't allow it air, typically it doesn't live, right? So just naturally in the way that we think about life, if we want stuff to grow, sometimes we have to let go of it to allow it to grow into the very thing that we dream of. The other thing I'm bringing it up is because in the moment that I said it and I was thinking about it and kind of uncomfortable with it, the other part I was laughing because I'm like, well, how does it grow if you don't hire people and you don't delegate tasks and you don't bring the smartest and the most courageous and the most passionate and the most caring folks in your sphere to work and iterate on these projects, right? Because the other thing that I've learned about from relinquishing control is that I'm not an expert in everything. I'm actually an expert in a small amount of things. And there are a bunch of people in this world who are far smarter in certain areas than I am. And if I don't allow those people to inform the process, if I don't allow those people to sit in seats of expert in whatever realm, department I need them to be in, we're never going to get to where we're going. And if we do, it might be by accident, right? And so part of relinquishing control is understanding that you don't have to be the expert in everything, and that the only reason you might believe you are is because you're sitting in ego. Because it's impossible that you could be an expert in every area that you need to be in to be able to run a highly successful, highly functioning business. And sometimes we relinquish control too late. And here's the problematic nature of that. For me, when I relinquish control too late, it tends to cost me a lot of money and a lot of extra time and a lot of, taking different steps that I thought I took already, but in the wrong direction because I didn't want to look to the experts and let go of that control and allow them to handle that business. And so I tried to do it myself. And you know where it gets me? Nowhere. Or it gets me in a worse situation than I even started out as. So for y'all out there, let me be very clear. The idea that we hold on to something that we've dreamed for, we've prayed for, we are the visionary aspect to its creation, right? It's like a seed and you nurture it and you plant it and you put water and you've put your blood, your sweat, your tears, all your money into it. Sounds like children, right? It is. But for the purposes of my conversation in this moment, it's about a business. But when I say that, it totally sounds like parenthood. You do all this because it matters so much to you. And I would say that birthing a business is similar to putting the amount of energy and effort into your children, right? Because it takes a lot of innovation. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of compassion. It takes a lot of self-reflection. It takes a lot of compromise, right? All of those aspects is what actually ends up going and feeding into a successful business. And so while I don't think it's as hard as raising children, like I've said before, I think raising children it's a different level of empathy and energy that you can't understand what it is until it happens. But certainly it's very similar. And so when you're doing that, I know it's a natural reaction to say, I don't want this to get messed up. I don't want someone to do something and do it the wrong way, and then I got to go back and replace it or redo it. And in a conversation I literally just had before I jumped on the podcast, someone said, there are people who work for me and they don't do it the way I do it, which makes sense, right? Because none of us do it the way someone else do it. And even for me, when I'm engaging in conversations with different people and they have a different idea, there are moments I have to take a breath and be like, okay, it's going to be okay. Their vision is aligned to your vision. They're really smart and competent. And yes, it's going to look vastly different than maybe if you did it. But the goal is to create a great product and they have the capacity to do so. And then I have to let go. The only reason this is a podcast episode, because I think it's really hard for all of us to let go. Because what we're letting go of is what we think is being sure of how something will end up. But what we're actually letting go of and struggling with is the uncertainty of what the outcome will be. And then enters in faith, right? You can't understand faith until your boat leaves the shore. If you're going to go on a cruise, if you go on boats a lot, anybody who spends a lot of time in water, once you lose sight of the shore, now it comes down to capacity and faith. That you have the ability to do what you got to do to get back there and that you're going to get back there in a safe manner, right? I think oftentimes we end up diminishing the level of what we can accomplish because we don't realize that everything that's great in this world in some aspect has an interconnected component woven in automatically. Great things require great people to inform it and to each have their own unique perspective that they then share and then we iterate on and we talk about and we decide what goes and what doesn't. And then from that, we create the thing that we think serves us best, or we move in a way that nurtures, if it's people, in a way that provides them space to expand, potentially advice to consider, and some next steps that we know are good next steps to give them, a little bit of runway as they're finding their way, right? It's so wild to me that how often all of that gets lost. I think part of the work of Hello Kind Soul podcast is really to tell the truth, to be vulnerable, to be transparent, and to talk about things that we don't often normalize or say out loud. I think it's very difficult to do a lot of the things you want to do in the world unless you have people willing to tell the truth. And so one of the most important things that I will always hope to bring to you in the best, most appropriate way are the thoughts and conversations that I engage in with other people, sometimes the challenges myself or other people problem solve together, what that looks like and feels like feels like and sounds like in real time, and the challenges around it, right? But I want to encourage y'all out there, like it's time to let go and relinquish control. We can dream about what we hope it could be. We can sit and write down what we want it to be. Know that you are going to end up exactly where you're supposed to be. But that's going to require you to believe that having other people impact your life, impact your journey is not a bad thing. Sometimes, even in the ways that people impact you may not be the way you wish they did, but even in that example is a ton of learning that you can glean from it. But all of this that I'm sharing with you literally came from an upgrade, right? I'm in a place where I get to do more in the world with more people, which is super exciting. But I could have missed the opportunity if I was so focused and stuck on, I don't want to let go of control and I want to make sure everybody reports to me. All of that is literally not necessary, but more importantly, it's not even feasible. Because there are moments where you're in so many different places and meetings and spaces that you can't even keep track of where your body is supposed to be in the next hour. And so I hope this encourages someone to think about, like, are you in your business, in your life, in your family, in your career right now, refusing to relinquish control? And is that giving you the outcomes that you really hoped and planned and prayed for? Because it might be. I don't think it probably is, but I don't think there's any absolutes in the world we're living in right now, right? But if you are struggling to relinquish control, the next question I want you to ask yourself is why, right? And if you say, well, this is why, I want you to ask yourself, what's the evidence that what you're saying is true? And if you have evidence, then you can decide, should I keep moving forward based on this evidence and this why? And is that a good enough reason to not relinquish control, right? Because there might be reasons, depending on the circumstance. And if the answer to the what's the evidence is I don't have any, then the question is, what is the fear and where does it live in your body? Because for me I spent all this time doing this thing that means a lot to me. And it's not just for me, it's for the world. And I'm hoping my best will do something that makes the world better. And if I give other people opportunities to inform this company, this thing, this vision, and they don't do it right, it might destroy the company. I feel like it destroying the company might be a leap. I mean, depending on the position, depending on what you're doing, potentially it's a leap. It's not a leap, but I think oftentimes I know my thoughts at this point, and most often when they're like running around my head is because they're like, it's that meme of the 3 o'clock in the morning when you see everybody shaking. That's my mind at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock at night. And so I realize that when I feel uncomfortable in my body, that's why I said to you, I engage in that process. When I feel uncomfortable in my body, I sit with it for a minute and I start to try to think about, where is that feeling coming from? And for some of you folks, if you've had a business and it failed before, if you had a relationship and it failed before, if you've struggled with your kids, then you might feel like, well, this may happen twice, so I'm just going to hold on as tight as I can. And I get it, right? No judgment here. But sometimes you might be blocking your own blessings because you're too scared to let go of what you think will be without even really having evidence that it might be that. Because the fear might be in your head. It's kind of like when people say, like, I'm not the success I want to be, and I don't know what's going on. But then you do a little digging, you realize that they've blocked their own success because in their mind, they're wildly scared of being really successful. So while they may not go out and crash out, they do these little things to constantly be distracted by or to like derail the whatever the mission is, right? Sometimes we have to think about and think deeply about, why are we scared to relinquish control? Is there a reason I don't want to let go? And if there is there hurt that needs to be healed? Is it the voice in your mind that's telling you it's not going to work because that's the thing that you've kind of, one of the tapes that keep playing that you can't get to stop? Is it a lack of trust in the folks that you've brought into the circle with you? And if you have a lack of trust, where does that come from? Like, what I hope I'm modeling for you is the consistent engagement in asking myself really good critical questions until I can't come up with an answer. then I know I'm probably exhausted the questions, right? But asking yourself these questions by yourself in the quiet of the night, in the middle of the day, in the morning, it's not always something that you have a conversation with other people. Sometimes I might engage in a conversation with folks to kind of hear their thoughts about what I'm thinking. But oftentimes these questions lead you to an end that says, the worry or the concern I have is attached to how much effort and energy I've put into this thing. And because I don't always trust the motives of people outside what I'm doing, when they come to support me, I worry and I question, because back in my experience as I was growing up or in the middle of my life or whatever, I trusted all these people and they let me down. And so now I'm in this place where I really could do something amazing and epic, right, in this season. And I'm so worried about if the relationships I believe in, I can actually trust. But my worry about the trust isn't how any of them have shown up. My worry about the trust is that back in the day, I couldn't trust these people. So I won't belabor the point, but here's what I want you to do, folks. Again, the process. If you are scared to let go of control, why? If you have the why, what's the evidence for your why? If you don't have evidence for the why, then you need to think about that potentially there's something else within your body, within your mind that's leading you to believe that you can't let go of control. And that is something you might want to attend to. If you have evidence for the why and it's sound evidence for the why, then it might be a situation where you don't let go of control, right? All of that is opportunity up on offer for you. The second thing is I want you to spend some time thinking about when something happens, a conversation happens, an interaction happens, an exchange happens, and you feel uncomfortable in your body. I want you to take some time to think about why. What just happened? Why did my disposition shift? Why did my heart start to move a little faster? Why does my stomach feel like there's a weight in it? All of those things is when we tune into our body and we're able to kind of tap into what's happening to us, it's reminding us that there's work to be done in this moment in our body right now. And so grant yourself the grace, provide yourself the space to do so. Either way, folks, I hope you have an amazing week. I want you to learn how and where and when is the most appropriate times for you to relinquish control, because the very thing you've prayed for, the place you want to go, the change you want to make might be on the other side of letting go. I hope you have an amazing week, kind soul. I will see you next week. Take care, be good, and make sure that you spend your time being kind in the world. Peace.